We are recording now. And Janine, would you mind just saying hello to see if this works? Janine, I see your picture up there, and it looks like you're unmuted. Are you able to respond and say something?
I wasn't sure if you said my name or not. I cut out a little bit here.
Okay, yes, I did say your name,
Oh, okay.
and you did come on.
You're fine, yeah.
Okay, good. So I think we're working, and we're going to find out if that's distracting or not. But I want to have a little more interaction in this one than maybe I normally do in the beginning, because in the normally I do a little monologue in the beginning about whatever the subject or topic was that I previewed in the email from last night or yesterday that I sent out to everybody. And today, what I previewed in the email was, did you find that at the start, bright line eating was easy, and then somehow it got hard, and you wondered why? What happened? And that little theme must have struck a chord with a lot of people, because already this morning I've gotten half dozen emails, kind of early this morning, and I don't normally get that many right off the bat, but that must strike a chord with a lot of people who are finding it easy in the beginning, and then at some point they lose a bunch of weight, and then at some point, for some reason that seems to be a puzzle to people, bright line eating becomes very difficult. And sometimes they don't get all the way back into bright line eating. And that was the theme of the emails that I got this morning. So I want to spend some time with that. On Wednesday, Susan Thompson put out her weekly vlog, and I'm hoping that a lot of you had the opportunity to see that vlog. And if you haven't, then I recommend that you do. I'll do something here. I need to, I'm going to make sure everyone is actually muted so that we don't have any background noise. Okay, mute all. Okay, and then allow participants to unmute themselves. Okay, terrific. We got that. So I'd like to begin an exploration of that subject and what happens when it starts off easy and then it seems to get hard. To do that, I want to go back to some of the basics of what I covered during the workshop, the 2 a.m. syndrome workshop, around the characteristics of the right and the left hemisphere, the right hemisphere personality and the left hemisphere personality. I hope all of you have had enough of a chance to see the early part of that workshop to be able to realize from the science that I presented in the videos that you got a chance to watch with Michael Gazzaniga, probably the scientist on this planet that knows more than anybody about the differences between the right and left hemisphere. And that as a result of you being able to see that, you got a pretty good idea. Yep, each hemisphere is an independent conscious system. And because there are two, not just one integrated system, because there are two, they are susceptible to conflict with each other. And that conflict can cause us problems. It can cause us episodes of inner turmoil, episodes of inner, let's say, disgust with ourselves, episodes of beating ourselves up, episodes of trying to repress like our inner expression, episodes of impulses, food impulses taking over, impulses and episodes of compulsion where we've got this choice. And in our case, we're talking about food, but I mean, there's lots of things. There's gambling addictions. There's drug addictions, there's shopping addictions, there's sexual addictions. But for us, the one that we are focused on is a food addiction if we're high on the susceptibility scale. And I should mention here that for the most part, what we're talking about here, this hard at the beginning or easy at the beginning and then hard later, is usually the experience of people who are high on the susceptibility scale. Those who are lower, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the susceptibility scale, they have fewer experiences like that where it's hard, easy in the beginning and hard later. So because we've got these two independent conscious systems, they can conflict with each other. And they also have very different personalities. They have different ways and a different fundamental philosophy of life, which is astounding, actually. But the science and the experiments that were done on the split brain patients by Michael Gazzaniga and Roger Sperry back in the 60s, 70s, and continues on to this day, show us that each of the hemispheres is an independent personality, and that conflict that some of us experience is very real, and it's very literal. So the science bears on that the left hemisphere, for the vast majority of us, has the attitude toward life that we need to be successful in life. That's the orientation, fundamental orientation of the left hemisphere towards life. Life needs to be a success. Success is important. Success and achievement to the left hemisphere. The right hemisphere, by contrast, the major purpose in life for her or him is enjoyment or fun. And because the left hemisphere is all about success, right hemisphere is all about enjoyment, they look at life differently in terms of time. So if you want to take some notes, I encourage you to take some notes around this, because this is good information to remember, because I'm building up to what I think is a fairly compelling explanation for why the Bright Line Eating Program can be easy at the beginning for those high on the susceptibility scale and then get harder later. So we have left hemisphere is interested in life success. So in order to do that, what the left hemisphere does is pays a lot of attention to past history, and it analyzes present day circumstances as well. And if something is happening to us that, let's say, is not a good thing, let's say we're undergoing some stress of some, or we're perceiving some stress, and we want to be successful, and that stress is in our way, our left hemisphere is going to look at that very analytically, and it's maybe going to look in the past. When have I had that experience in the past? And what have I done in the past in order to alleviate that experience? And then it'll maybe come up with some ideas, some alternatives, figure a few things out, and it'll start to play those out into the future to see, okay, which one of these can work today for me to fix this current situation that we're experiencing. And so it's got this orientation and sees as very important what's happened in the past lessons, and what is going to happen in the future if we play out, some of these, solution-oriented scenarios. It also looks at choices that maybe we're considering and running them out into the future and seeing negative consequences. And then in that case, if it sees negative consequences, if she sees that, then she's going to try and repress and not do that behavior, because it's going to have those future negative consequences. So you can see there's a lot of depth and complexity to the left hemisphere and what he does. because there's she basically navigates us, tries to navigate us through life and to reach success and to be continually achieving. Now, by contrast, the right hemisphere, because it's oriented towards enjoyment and pleasure and fun, doesn't care about the past so much, doesn't care about the future so much, cares primarily about present circumstances right here in this moment. She is oriented toward the present moment. And when she looks at behaviors, she doesn't primarily consider future consequences. She considers immediate consequences. Am I going to feel good as a result of this behavior that I want to do right now? And if she decides right there in the moment, yep, this is going to make me feel good in some way, she's going to go for it. She's going to push it. She's going to create a craving. And if there's like a temptation, or if there is, let's say, an opportunity for not my food, and let's say a craving just begins in that lower part of the brain, what was it? Well, can't remember it right now. That lower part, hippocampus is one of the things. The amygdala is down there, but there's one that Susan always talks about that I always keep forgetting. And it begins down there, and it sends that craving signal up into the right, into the left hemisphere. Then the right hemisphere is going to take that information and going to run with it, and going to go, that craving, we satisfy that craving, I'm going to enjoy the present moment a lot. And that's the most important thing for me. So I'm going to amp up the pressure. Let's do this thing. And then the left hemisphere is going to, now hang on a second. Now, I'm talking about the anatomy here of a compulsion, where you're thinking about things back and forth. That's what a compulsion is all about. As opposed to an impulse where you just like kind of automatically just off the cuff do something, an impulse, and maybe regret it later. But a compulsion, there's some inner conflict, inner debating going back and forth with a compulsion. So you've got the left hemisphere trying to hold things back, and the right hemisphere going, no, no, we're undergoing stress, we're tired, and we deserve this. And keep amping up the pressure, because present moment is the most important thing to her. And in that regard, regarding enjoyment, pleasure, and fun, there are things that the things that turn out to be important for her are things that are interesting, things that are fascinating, things obviously that are physically pleasurable, things that are sensuous in some way, and food is sensuous, and sexuality is sensuous, and other things, touching is sensuous, and being, let's say, taking a sauna is sensuous, going into a hot tub. There are tons of things that are sensuous, things that are novel, things that are new, things that are fascinating. All those are part of enjoyment and fun and pleasure for the right hemisphere. And she is all about experiencing that. So life for her is all about that, all about enjoyment. And that's the reason for her orientation to be right there in the moment. Her best interests, in her view, are your present best interests. Whereas the left hemisphere, the way she looks at things, she looks at your future best interests. And you can see that there's a fundamental difference between, it's good to have both, but they can conflict at times. When something that in the present moment is going to be a lot of fun, but it's going to have some future negative consequences, that's going to, that's the makings of a compulsion, and that's the makings of inner conflict. So having and knowing that, having that in mind about the fundamental different orientation between the left and the right hemisphere, what happens when we begin, and we're high on the susceptibility scale, we begin and we learn about bright line eating. I remember when I first saw it, I saw it in February of 2015. That was her second, Susan Thompson's second boot camp. The first one was October of 2014, I think. Yeah. And I watched those 3 videos and I thought, yeah, I think this really makes a lot of sense. And as I was listening, that appealed to both my left and my right hemisphere because I was overweight at the time. And so my left hemisphere is interested because it wants me to be successful, wants me to have the right size body to be successful, to uh, in feeling better, looking better, having my clothes fit better, all those great things about when you get down to, when you're in the vicinity of your goal weight, that can happen. And so those are future best interests. And my left hemisphere was all for it. My right hemisphere, um, he was all for it at the same time because he wasn't comfortable in my body, and he wasn't, you know, uh, liking, clothes fitting tight. And my right hemisphere has a vested interest in looking good. And there's something sensual about that, something primal even about, looking good. So that appealed, and it sounded like it could really work. So it was new and it was novel. Um, and it shares, and so I thought, this is worth doing, but I didn't sign up for it at the time. And what happened, though, is I cut out sugar and flour most of the time. So there was 3 months that passed: February, March, April, and I think it was May, and then came June. And there were, in those 3 months, without too much trying, I lost 12 pounds. So that's 3 pounds a month. That's a good rate of loss that they say is healthy, not too fast, not too slow. And so it was new and novel enough for me, for both my left and right hemisphere, to be willing to work together on this in cutting back on sugar and flour. Didn't cut back like totally and completely on both of those. But for that period of 3 months, my right and my left hemisphere were in agreement with each other. They were in cahoots, and they were seeing some good things happen that were successful, which appeals to the left hemisphere. And it wasn't total deprivation. I still had some sweets, I still had some, flour stuff from time to time. And that kept my right hemisphere happy most of the time. And so that combination for my right hemisphere, beginning to lose weight, feeling better, good in my clothes, and still being able to, indulge from time to time, that kept them happy. So they were both happy. And then came June, and Susan asked me to do this 2 a.m. workshop. And I was happy to do that. And then, so that, then I became a little more, what's the word? I cut out pretty much all sugar and flour, almost all. And then both of my sons got involved, and they were experiencing some good results during June, July, and August. And so it continued to be something that was enjoyable for me, and I was being successful at it. So my right and left hemisphere were still both totally and completely on board with this. So then I can't say for sure exactly, what happened where I started to kind of go up a little bit. But there was a point at time, and it was a gradual thing, where I started to do a little bit more of what I did those first 3 months from February, March, April, and May, where I did a little bit of it did a little bit of sugar and flour. And most of us know, who are high on the susceptibility scale, like we're upwards of a 7, 8, 9, 10, and I think I'm a 10, a 9 or 10 when I tested, that if we do a little bit, that in almost assuredly, in most cases, that's what we call the slippery slope for us high on the susceptibility scale, and we start to do some binges. And even though I continued to on the program, it was starting to become difficult for me. And so then what I realized in working with so many people in the Bright Lines and hearing so many stories since that June, that first 2 a.m. syndrome workshop, from June 2015 till now, which here we are, June 2018, which is 3 years later, working with many of you in individual sessions and in some group sessions in the last year, and seeing the stories also on the Facebook pages, of which I'm a member of probably half a dozen or more of them, is that things got a little more difficult. And the fundamental reason that happens, I think you can hear me kind of leading up to it, is that the novelty to some extent wears off for the right hemisphere. And in combination, it's not quite so new anymore. And that in combination with sometimes stress or triggers from our past can come into play. And because it's not so new anymore, and because maybe the right hemisphere looked at that early success, let's say 3, 4, 5, 6 months of early success, and she went, I'm not sure I'm on board with that anymore. I'm not sure I'm on board with depriving myself so much anymore. And I am now thinking, I am feeling this deprivation, and I want more enjoyment in my life. And right now, it was great in the beginning, but right now it seems like there are other things intruding on it, stress and triggers and things like that. And so that, to me, is the general. Susan, in her vlog yesterday, talked about 2 reasons that we begin to have difficulty with our bright lines. And the one that I'm focusing on here today, the one that's, I think, is most relevant for a lot of us, is she said there's some inner work that needs to be done. That's one of the reasons why it becomes difficult after a while, that there is some inner work that we need to get done. And that absolutely fits right in with the scenario I've been discussing and talking about, in the sense that some inner work needs to be done with the right hemisphere. She was happy in the beginning and totally and completely willing to give up things because it was new and novel, and there was a great expectation. And the expectation was great for the left hemisphere. Everything got fulfilled there because she's all about success, and losing weight is equated with success. But the right hemisphere is all about enjoyment. And in order for enjoyment for her to endure, there needs to be new things that come on the scene from time to time to maintain that enjoyment. And it could be said that, the Bright Line Eating program wasn't quite so new anymore. And there were other things, other stresses that seemed to be coming into the picture as well, which upset the, emotional equilibrium, causing some discontent. And discontent is absolutely the opposite of pleasure and enjoyment. And so when there's discontent, the right hemisphere personality is going to go to work and figure out where are we going to take advantage of moments and bring some pleasure, more enjoyment back into our life, more newness, more things with some fascination. So The perspective that I want to offer about that is that, number one, what Susan said about the first cause of having difficulty with bright lines after initial success is some inner work that needs to be done. That is absolutely true. Some form of inner work needs to be done that can bring it back to the level of success that was had before. Now, maybe that inner work doesn't bring it all the way back. Maybe there's some kind of new equilibrium that can be maintained where, bright lines may not be perfect, but goal weight is established. And the high susceptibility issue doesn't come into play. So there are different, inner work is needed to be done, but you don't have to go for perfection. You need to go for improvement, because perfection is never going to be the key, because the right hemisphere does not last long at perfection when there is deprivation. That's part of the picture as well. So what I would say has happened, and I'm speaking for myself and for a lot of the folks that I've worked with one-on-one and in group sessions, is that the right hemisphere has become disgruntled and felt left out and felt, well, in some cases, even disrespected, in that her needs, his needs, are being still put at second place. So the perspective I'm offering is that, number one, if you have not done a personal reconciliation reunion, if you have not used that structured daydream process to build a team, a mutually cooperating, collaborative, and mutually affectionate team relationship between your left and right hemisphere personality, then you need to do that. You absolutely need to do that. Because that is the foundational step, I would say, to being able to arrive at goal weight and stay there permanently, is have a good relationship, cooperative, collaborative, affectionate, and loving and respectful between the left and the right hemisphere. So you need to do that, number one. And then number two, if you've already done that, then I have run into and heard the story from a lot of people that have just kind of had it be a one-off, that structured daydream. They got some good results from that. They got, a ton of inner peace. They got a good relationship going between their left and the right hemisphere. And they just then figured that was like a structured daydream I only needed to do one time. And that's actually not true. Once you start and repair that relationship through a reconciliation between the left and the right hemisphere, that relationship needs nurturing. It needs building. It needs to deepen and be enriched. And that's how actually I often use the expression, once I started to regularly work on my inner relationship and regularly do inner communing and regularly doing structured daydreams, where I'm communing with myself in a three-way. I'll try to remember to say something about that. That is really what enables sticking to your bright lines on a really consistent basis when that relationship is in place. And what I was going to say is I became my own best friend. And I enjoyed my own company. And I still love friends, and I still love being, with people that I like to spend time with, and my kids. But I really enjoy spending time with myself as well. And that wasn't always the case. but it is the case now. And it allows me to, let's say, have some good success in my life and enjoy it at the same time. And that is a great combination. And the right and left hemisphere working together are what brings that, what can bring that for you. So, so that second thing I'm talking about is communing more with your right hemisphere and having enjoyable, let's say, dialogues, trialogues, in which you do things like when we were kids. Remember, if you remember right, I hope we can all remember back to when we did a lot of make-believe. Well, this is a lot like make-believe, except that what we know is the left and right hemisphere are, in fact, this is not make-believe, individual conscious systems. And it's a great thing that individual as they are, there's the opportunity to communicate with each other. And because we're self-reflexive human beings, self-reflexive in the sense that we're unique in the species here on this earth. And there may be two other species, dolphins and whales. I don't know for sure about that, who can be self-reflexive. As far as I know, we're the unique species on this earth where we can have a thought, and then we can think about the thought. And then we can even think about thinking about the thought. So we were able to like do things and then reflect on what we do and like do assessment on how we did. And that's a learning process that we have. That self-reflexive is an extra feature that we have as human beings that are part of a fantastic learning process. So being self-reflective, studying books and learning that way is unique to the human species. So what I'm getting at here is that the structured daydream that I taught you how to do in the workshop is a three-way affair where you bring out into each palm of each hand, you bring out an image of your right hemisphere into one hand and your left hemisphere into the other hand. And that allows you to be back here, your self-reflexive consciousness. I call it maybe your higher self, your inner self, your and so you're able to conduct like a three-way conversation. And in that structured daydream, your inner self that's back here, her job was to facilitate that between the two of them to make sure that they covered all the 7 steps. So you can continue though and have other situations in which you do that three-way dialogue, that structured daydream. It doesn't have to be a reconciliation anymore because you reconciled. I mean, you reconciled, you did the healing of the relationship in the first one. And you don't have to do that twice, although you might in the future have, occasion to apologize to yourself for making some mistake here or there. But you're not as estranged from each other, certainly as you were before the reconciliation and the reunion with each other. So doing more of that kind of inner communing can help keep your right hemisphere personality actively engaged in the bright line eating movement and actively engaged and on board with the bright line eating behaviors that will, lead us to, as Susan says, happy, thin, and free. That will lead us to, our goal weight and, the overall health that, being at a right size provides for us. I know for me, it's knocked down, my blood pressure. I don't have to have medication anymore. It's knocked all of my, cholesterol stuff down where it needs to be. So those are two things. Do the reconciliation if you haven't done it yet. Second thing is, once you've done it, regularly do communing with each other, where you're involving your right hemisphere in active conversation and interaction, where she can feel wanted, needed, respected. And then the third thing that I've spoken about any number of times is sitting down with a pen and paper and writing down the things that you really love to do. Now, those things that you really love to do are the things that, when you write them down, those are the things that your right hemisphere loves to do. And if she's getting shortchanged on those things, then she's going to cause trouble with your bright lines. And if she is, after a period of 3, 4, 6 months of being successful, having it be easy in the beginning with your bright lines, if she's being shortchanged in some other areas of enjoyment, then she's going to start to make it harder. And I'm going to say, for those of us high on the susceptibility scale, categorically, when we begin to have difficulty staying on our bright lines after it being so easy, it's because the right hemisphere is not being taken into consideration the way she needs to be. She's not being enrolled in the continuing process of staying within your bright lines. And she needs to be enrolled. She needs to be respected. So if I ask, myself the question, I'm sitting down, I'm writing down some of the things that we enjoy, that I enjoy a lot, and okay, I'm going to put down bowling. Bowling is one of those things I really, really like a lot. And then I think, oh, you know what? I just really haven't had, my circumstances haven't just allowed me to do much bowling. When I say that, that's my left hemisphere talking. I just haven't had much time to do that bowling. When I say that, when my left hemisphere says that, you know what my right hemisphere is thinking? Well, if he's paying attention, he's feeling disrespected. That his needs of enjoyment, that what? Left hemisphere doesn't quite have time for that, that's not a way to be successful in life. So we're going to put that on the back burner. So I'm encouraging you on this third way of enrolling your right hemisphere. When you're making that list and you start thinking about, okay, when am I going to find time to do some of these things? If you're having that thought, when am I going to find time to have and do those things? You are holding in your hand the well-being and joy of your right hemisphere when you have that thought. How am I going to make time for this? And I'm going to encourage you that absolutely you need to make time. No matter what it takes, make time for the things that your right hemisphere enjoys, that you enjoy as left hemisphere as well, but have been maybe putting on a back burner, have maybe not been carving out time for because you've been focused on success in other areas, or just maintaining other areas, like maintaining stress levels to a lower level, doing your best. That these areas of enjoyment, if you carve out time for them, you are not only holding the well-being in your hands of your right hemisphere, you're holding in your hands the success or not of your Bright Line eating program. So I'm encouraging you to do those 3 things. Do another reconciliation and reunion if you find that your right hemisphere is unhappy during those times when holding your bright lines is becoming hard. When your right hemisphere is unhappy with you and there's some inner turmoil going on, do that reconciliation reunion again. And the second thing is commune on a regular basis so that you're You're interacting with yourself, becoming your own best friend, enjoying your own company. Believe me, that is sustainable. It's doable. And the third thing is find out, make that list of those things that you know she really loves to do, and then absolutely make time for doing those things. And you will find that she then becomes way more willing to have the teamwork, to have the partnership with you that she had with you at the beginning, where both of you were totally and completely on board with the Bright Line Eating program and the Bright Line Eating process. And she'll come on board with you back again. And there is one other thing, a fourth thing, and that is triggers from your past. And although the 2 a.m. syndrome workshop doesn't cover that, I talk about it a little bit there, and I talk about it a lot during these group coaching calls, that these triggers from our past, which come from negative experiences, traumatic experiences in some cases that we've had in that period of time, from 1 to 12 years old, that those triggers from back then, they still show up in our lives. Something happens that triggers them, something in a relationship with a person, or something happens in our life which is a challenge, that might trigger a feeling from our past, that might then trigger us wanting to eat. And if the current present day relationship between the left and the right hemisphere are not so great, then when those triggers occur, we can succumb to them, even though we've done a reconciliation reunion. On the other hand, when the partnership between the left and the right hemisphere is good, we've got a really good chance, when those triggers pop up, of being able to sit down, do some inner communing, and here's that trigger, and okay, we're going to do something else that we really love and not that particular thing. And in that inner dialogue, in that inner negotiation, both hemispheres, and most importantly, your right hemisphere, agrees to the negotiation. And if the inner relationship is good and collaborative, then your right hemisphere is going to agree, and you're going to be able to dodge that bullet, so to speak, of that trigger. And where you can, a second approach to that is where you can work with that trigger. And I've got a workshop that I'm going to be doing in the near future here that I'll send out more information about. And I've done a series of them, 4 or 5 sets of those workshops for how to deal with that, those triggers that come from our past. And the goal is to work with those triggers in such a way that you neutralize the negative emotional content of those triggers when they occur, because it's the emotional content that is so intense that pushes us to break our bright lines. So, and there are other modalities as well, in addition to the one that I use and teach, where if you've got a trigger that's coming and you showing up in your life, and I've had a couple of conversations just in this past week with Bright Line folks, who took advantage of the no-cost evaluation session that I offer, where we've unfolded some triggers that they came from their past, that there are other methodologies for how to work with them. There is, I believe the fellow's name is Eric Constantine. I think, I can't say for certainty, but I believe that's parts work. I think there is success that you can get with that. But the main thing when it comes to working with triggers from your past is to work with the emotional content. So one of the techniques that I could offer you as this fourth technique then for working with triggers that have emotional content from your past that are leading you to really want to take not my food is to, when it happens, to notice the emotional content, notice the feeling, and notice where that is in your body. And take a few moments to do a structured daydream in which you notice that feeling and you actively thank that feeling. You express appreciation to that feeling for it doing its best to try to take care of you, to try to keep you safe. So, are you with me there? I'll say that one more time. That you do a short, structured daydream. You're like in the midst of a craving, or you're in the midst of a trigger that you know is from your past. You identify that emotion and even where that is in your body. You do a brief structured daydream in which you thank that emotion. You express heartfelt appreciation for that emotion, for its purpose, because it's doing its best to take care of you, to keep you safe in some way. And it's an old feeling from your past, and you don't need it anymore, but it still keeps going. And so if you thank it for its positive intention, you allow it to dissipate and can get through the craving. And that will satisfy. If you can get through the craving, that means your right hemisphere is cooperating with you. If you can release that emotional content, but you need to stop. You need to stop and do a structured daydream in which you could even become more elaborate with it, in addition to identifying the emotional content that you're feeling from that trigger from your past. You can bring out your parts again, your right and left hemisphere, and conduct a strategy session between your right and left hemisphere in that three-way process. You're back here as your inner self, and what can be done then is you moderate this strategy session between all three of you, your right hemisphere personnel, left hemisphere, and your inner self. And you lay out the gauntlet, the challenge. What are we going to do about this? Because this happens often in our life. What can we do about this? And you actively engage both the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere in consciousness. You can ask, okay, where did that come from in our life? Well, that came from way back when I was 7 years old. You go, okay, what can we do about that today? Because we don't have, what happened back then is not what's happening today. And we don't need that today. And so you conduct this more sophisticated, let's say, strategy session for how are we going to deal with that situation in the future, other than eating, dealing with it in some other way when it comes up again, if it does come up again. So those are four things that I encourage you to do, all based on what I consider the truth of when things are easy at the beginning and then they get harder in terms of staying within our bright lines. The truth is that we've lost the support of our right hemisphere. She is not fully on board with it like she was in the beginning. She had high hopes just like you did. And she enjoyed, the experience of losing the weight. And she felt good with the physical parts, but then it began to wear off for her because she needs to be continually. Her idea is in the moment. The moment needs to be pleasurable. The moment needs to be fun. The moment needs to be enjoyable. And the more moments like that she can help you create, the happier that she is. So do one or all of those four things to get your right hemisphere back on board, where the two of you are once again working in tandem, working together as a collaborative, mutually affectionate, mutually respectful team, like you were in the beginning. And that, to my way of thinking, if you're high on the susceptibility scale, those four areas offer some good opportunity for getting you back on track. And so if you're also interested in doing a workshop with me on that, or if you're interested in working with me, just by all means send me an email, and we'll do that initial no-cost consultation and then make a decision from there. In most of the cases where I do that no-cost session with someone, I'm able to, like in a couple of cases last week, able to kind of point them in the right direction to how to do something different with their original reconciliation or reunion, or I give them some ideas, about how to do some further work, how to do some further communing with each other. Oftentimes, it's going to be something in one of those three areas. The inner reconciliation didn't quite take. The second thing is the communing didn't continue after, and triggers and cravings started to come in. And the third thing is was triggers from your past, and that's usually what comes up in the conversations. And I point out different ways to do it, to try it on their own, or if they decide they want to work with me. So I want to find out what people are thinking right now about everything that I've covered here. And so I'm going to ask if you have a thought. In fact, I'm going to call on you. And if you don't have a thought, you can just tell me, Mike, I don't have a thought, but I might, or if you have a question or a comment or an observation. So I'm going to begin with, let's see, I'm going to shift over to the other thing where I can see everyone. Okay, now I can see everyone. I think you can see how many people we've got on the program here. We got, what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4 across the top. 4 times 4, 16, 17, 18, 19 people. So let's see, I'm going to start with, I'm going to unmute, let's see, Cindy is the name that's there. So I'm going to say something for a moment, Cindy, to give you a little chance to collect your thought if you have it. I've got you unmuted right now. So what I'm wondering and would like to hear from people is, as I was going through this discussion, tell me what you were thinking. And so Cindy, would you be willing to share with us what you were thinking? Okay, so the first name, it may be that you don't have a microphone that works. Okay, so, okay, Cindy, I'm going to mute you, and you can, let's see, you can unmute yourself. Okay, might at some stage here. All right. So I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to mute Judith Anderson Christian. Judith, you had a moment to think. Would you tell me what you were thinking?
I was afraid you were going to ask me that. I've been thinking about a lot, but what it really helped me, because I'm kind of new to all this, and I haven't done the reconciliation yet, but it really makes me understand really the difference between the left and the right brain, and I'm just can identify with that a lot. And I kind of think that I'm pretty much in touch with my right brain, and I really haven't had a problem with this program. You know, at the beginning it wasn't easy, but it was, and right now it isn't easy, but it is.
Okay.
And I've kind of had the same problem, or the same, difficulty, from the beginning. And it definitely could be something from my childhood, as I realize, and what it is nighttime eating. I don't have any problem. I don't have any problem eating good, healthy food. And even when I do nighttime eating, it's healthy food. And I'm almost at my goal weight, so I feel like I'm kind of sabotaging myself by, not keeping my lines bright. So yeah, I want to work on this and really kind of understand where that comes from. But I just realized that, from my childhood and even with my children, I always allowed them to eat something, a healthy snack before they went to bed. So
Yeah. Okay. So based on everything I heard you say, I think your thoughts are on the right track. That yes, absolutely do a personal reconciliation reunion. And have you watched the video on that?
no, I don't, if I have, I can't remember doing it. No.
Okay, so it's called the 2 a.m. workshop, or beating the 2 a.m. syndrome, um, understanding and taking charge of the dynamics of food temptations, food cravings.
Okay.
Okay, and so in the email that I sent to you yesterday, there's a link to
I
that.
saw, and I did go, but I couldn't follow through and do any more before the call.
Okay, so so I recommend that you go ahead and do that. The first hour or so is all about the science. So if you want to get, and it's a 2-hour workshop, so if you want to get right to how to do the personal reconciliation reunion, go skip that first hour and go to about the 1 hour and 10-minute mark,
Okay.
and there's where the instructions are. And then there's also printed instructions, and there's a link to download the printed instructions, the user guide, right there below the video itself.
Okay.
You click on that, then it's in a Dropbox thing, and you may get a sign that says wants you to sign up for Dropbox, but you just hit the X in the upper right corner and just get rid of that distraction, and then you'll be right there, and you'll be able to download those instructions. And then I encourage you to read those instructions a couple times before you try the reconciliation reunion, before actually doing it.
Okay.
All right, Judith, thank you very much for your comment. Okay, I'm going to put you back on mute. And let's see. I've got someone, Marianne. Marianne, the same question for you. Or if you have a question, comment, or observation. And my primary question is, what were you thinking as I was talking about the right and left hemisphere? And it starts off easy and gets hard.
Well, I was realizing that I've been punishing the right brain.
You've been what?
Punishing my right brain. She got me here to begin with, and so the fun stuff that I like to do, I haven't been doing. And it's led me into slipping quantities and sneaking food every now and then. And I've been able to stabilize my weight. I'm not losing weight, and I still have about 25 pounds to goal weight. So it was just like a mind blown several times during your talk. So a lot of the things that I find fun to do, I haven't been doing. I have been avoiding those because I've been kind of punishing myself over that.
Yeah. So what are you thinking? You've been punishing yourself, but what are you thinking now?
Well, I'm thinking I need to add in some of the fun things that I enjoy doing. I need to get those back in my life. And maybe that'll help level me out where I can continue on this journey and not feel so frustrated and upset with myself all of the time.
Okay, and I should check. First of all, I 100%, 110% agree with that. that you absolutely do those fun things and bring back some balance there. Have you done a personal reconciliation or reunion?
No, I have not.
Okay. So once again, I think I heard you towards the tail end of what you said, being upset with yourself. Maybe upset wasn't the word. What was the word you used?
Frustrated.
Frustrated with yourself?
Yes.
Okay. And a personal reconciliation and reunion will totally transform that.
Okay.
Completely transform that. And it's doing a structured daydream, structured in the sense that you follow the instructions for how to do it. And so I do recommend that you go ahead and click that link near the bottom of the email that I sent you yesterday.
Okay.
To go and watch it. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes long. And, I've gotten the feedback that for some people, in the beginning that it's hard to watch, that there's maybe too much science, or maybe I'm not that good a presenter at the same time. But I encourage you, stick with it, like no matter what, because the content is excellent. And the exercise itself is an absolutely beautiful, almost miraculous exercise in what it accomplishes for you.
Okay, I
So
will certainly give it a try.
absolutely. All right, Marianne. And then same thing with you, Judith, too. I would love to hear feedback from you on the results you get from that, Marianne. My email is mentor@cox.net, mentor at cox.net, mentor@cox.net. Easy to remember. Send me a little synopsis of how it turns out for you. I'd love to hear from you.
Okay, I'll start working on it this week.
All right. Thanks
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and thanks for sharing. Okay. I just unmuted Sweet Suze. Okay. And I don't know if you have a microphone, but, my question is, tell me what you were thinking. What was the most primary thing that was on your mind as you were listening to me talk about the right and the left hemisphere? Or if you have a question or comment or observation. Let's see. So, Sweet Suze, you're unmuted.
I don't seem to. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Yeah. No, I tuned in because I had done your reconciliation reunion work when I first started Bright Line Eating back in 2016. And currently, I've been doing some mentoring with some Bright Line Eaters. And I wanted to kind of refresh my memory on the 2 a.m. syndrome, and because I don't think anybody has talked about it recently. And so that's why I tuned in today.
Okay. All right. So thank you for that. And I'm glad you were here for that, because that, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, basically that was my goal here, to kind of, in a nutshell, bring out, what happens in the left and right hand, what are the dynamics that go on, and how do they interact with each other when things are easy, and how do they interact with each other when things are getting difficult. And the basic understanding to take away is that when the relationship is not good, when the relationship is like edgy, you're always going to have problems. When the relationship is good, then almost in all cases, the bright lines are going to be good. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. It does.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Because that was exactly, I wanted it to be a good summation of the 2 a.m. syndrome. Okay. I'm going to put you back on mute. And if you have a comment, question, or observation as we go along, you can absolutely unmute yourself. Okay. And so I got to write these down so I don't accidentally call on someone twice. Okay, I'm going to unmute Bev. Bev, let's see. I'm asking the same question. If you have a comment, question, or observation, terrific. And if you're willing to share, what were you thinking while I was talking about the right and left hemisphere?
Well, I was trying to recall the reunion. I can't remember if I actually did it or not, but I'll certainly go back and review that again. It totally makes sense. The whole right brain not being engaged now. I've joined October 2017. I lost 50 pounds and I've got like 30 or so yet to go. And I just stalled there, and I figured I've been there all my life before I gained the 50. So I just figured that I was sabotaging myself to stay there where I'm semi-comfortable. But yeah, I certainly agree with that right brain getting engaged again, doing something fun.
Yeah. Have you got any ideas? How are you going to proceed?
Well, I just joined it's actually a spa, but they do electric muscle stimulation, I think. And so it's an exercise thing where I can actually tone the muscles and maybe get rid of some of the fat that's hanging around there.
Yeah.
And I think that will encourage me to stick solider to the bright lines. I'm hoping that.
Okay. So you're looking for, is that going to be like a little fun?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never done that before, so I don't know what it feels like. Have you done it yet? Have you had a sample?
I actually did a sample last week. Yeah. I felt so good after. It was amazing.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It was a suit. You put a suit on and they connect you up and they stimulate the muscles, thighs. Of course, my arms are all flabby, and abdomen and back. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So what did that feel like?
It felt like it kind of woke everything up, like woke me up. Like I've
Yeah.
been not doing any exercise and doing the bunny slippers and all of that. And it
Yeah.
just felt like I'm back in the game.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. All right.
Thank
And
you.
keep coming up with more fun things too. Thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. And if you have any other thoughts, by all means, just pop back in.
Okay.
I enjoy people interrupting.
Okay.
Sometimes, not just sometimes, in almost all cases, if there's an interruption, it always takes things, let's say, where it needs to go. And usually it's pretty fascinating and interesting.
Excellent.
So I
Thank you.
love interruptions. You're welcome. Okay. Put you back on mute for now. Okay. And let's see here. Let's see. I've got Lori Hurst. Let's see. You've been hearing some of the comments. So, Lori, what were you thinking? Have you got a microphone?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Well, right away, I do some work with coaching high conflict individuals, and I'm a conflict management specialist. So it's the same thing: the right brain and the left brain, and the right. I can't remember which side, but it hijacks, and the emotions take over, and rational brain goes out. And I never thought of it in this respect around the eating, and it's so true, because just even today, I've just started on. I have a resistance to food planning, and that's because there's no joy in it for me. And today I kind of got back on track, and I could feel the frustration rising. And I think what you're saying there is the right brain's going, hey, wait a minute, I don't buy into this. This is too much trouble.
Exactly.
So yeah, so that's a neat awareness. So I'll be paying attention to that. The piece around showing appreciation for the feelings is a very neat exercise. So I'm going to try that on as well. I'm hoping that my right brain cooperates. Yeah, because I think she's a feisty one.
So have you done a reconciliation reunion?
No. So
Okay.
I would love to do that. So.
Okay. So you know how to do it. You click on that link at the bottom of the email that I sent you. By the way, are you here because you saw the email that I sent out yesterday?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. It's down there at the bottom of that one.
Yeah. And I had originally on my name Amy Hurst, and that's my daughter. So she's been using this computer, and for some reason, when I come into Zoom, it shows her name. So I'm not sure how that. So I switched it, so it should say my real name, which is Lori Hurst.
Okay. Yeah, that's what it says for now.
Okay.
I
Okay,
got
good.
it.
All right.
And then what was that? You said you coach. What was the word?
High conflict
Oh, high
behaviors.
conflict.
Yeah, there's certain
Got it.
individuals in the workplace that demonstrate those. They're constantly getting into conflict with other people.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah,
That is, I would say that's a good field.
yeah,
That's a good niche.
yeah. It's growing
You're
too.
never gonna run out
Yeah,
on
that's
that
right.
one.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All right. And then this, you were talking about, writing down, doing a plan,
Yes.
and you could feel the frustration rising.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's anything if it's not convenient, and if I'm hungry, look out. That's where I'm really agitated.
Yeah.
Or if it's too much work, then I get agitated. And
Yeah.
limited time, low energy, anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So I'm going to say for now, if you haven't done the reconciliation reunion, that is the fundamental transformation well, in the average population, back in the day, I used to work strictly with business professionals for about 15 years and did executive coaching. And I learned early on that inner conflict was rampant. And about 1 out of 3 people that I worked with in that population had episodes of inner conflict that were frequent enough, intense enough, and lasted long enough that they wish they didn't have them, that they really wish they didn't have them. And it made life for them more of an attempt to avoid failure than to go for success.
Mm-hmm.
And that made it not so fun for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I started specializing in that early on. And what I've discovered is if there's active inner conflict that goes on in episodes, that it affects every area of their life. And that is so foundational that once a person, let's say, heals that inner relationship and gets the inner peace that comes from that, they are tenfold more effective. Well, let me put it this way. They are tenfold more effective at enjoying their life,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
at having a shot at really getting some fulfillment and satisfaction on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
And that's the foundation. I mean, you want to be able to have success and enjoy it at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is the ideal. So,
Mm-hmm.
and so I so encourage you, and I want you to let me know, mentor@cox.net, let me know how that goes, because you will experience a significant emotional event in a very, very positive way.
Mm.
And an inner peace you haven't had for a long, long time.
Mm.
And anybody here who's listening on this call on the replay, or anybody who's here live right now, same thing. If you haven't done it, and you want to live a life that combines the best of success and enjoyment, that inner conflict resolution, that transformation is the foundational transformation for enjoying your life and having it be successful. Everything else, in fact, even inner work with someone's past, like trying to resolve past trauma. If there's inner conflict that's actively going on, that makes it very difficult to work with past traumas. So in that sense, then, doing inner conflict work, if it's present, is foundational in the sense that once you do that, then you basically handle the current day problem, which is the frustration, with yourself. You handle that current day problem by uniting your hemispheres, and then once they're in that relationship, then you're in a position to have compassion, genuine compassion for yourself, which is a requirement to work successfully with past trauma. Being compassionate with your younger self is needed to be successful at resolving and neutralizing emotions from past trauma. That's self-compassion. And so many people that I work with, they were not able to do it because I do both. I work with past trauma and I work with inner conflict. And if I work with someone who has past trauma, and I, for some reason, have missed that they've got episodes of inner conflict, I didn't pick up on it. The work that I have them do often does not work, doesn't do the job. And then once I backtrack and say, okay, we had some inner conflict that we didn't know about, let's work with that. Do that first, then that forms the basis. And then I have them do the past work. They're able to do it with flying colors. So that's the sequence that needs to go in. Get yourself straight first, then you can work with your past more effectively.
Right. Beautiful.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'll put you back on mute. All right. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So, Meredith, I'm going to unmute you. Meredith, do you have a microphone? And would you be willing to say, what were you thinking? Okay. So you might be working with your microphone to make it work. So the name up there is Meredith, and I'm hearing some clicks. Okay. All right. I'll come back to you, Meredith. And so I just put you on mute. And Lori, okay, we just spoke. Yeah, the picture shifted. Okay, and let's see. Okay, and okay, Brooke, I'm going to unmute you. Okay, good. Okay, what were you thinking?
Well, the conflict between the left and the right makes so much sense to me. I think I'm strong in both areas, but the right always has to win in the end, and that's why I was so curious about this program, because I did get on really strong and then crashed and burned and gained some weight back. And I've been working in other programs on this like inner rebel in me.
Yeah. That
really has a hard time with rules and regulations and structure. I mean, I've never worked a real structured job. I've always freelanced. So I've kind of designed my life to live without rules as much as possible. And I have a lot of, I've been married a long time, but it took me 3 years to just say yes. So commitment is also an issue. So I am definitely I wrote down where the 2 a.m. syndrome is and get right to that reconciliation. The rebel, though, when I was really struggling, I'm still struggling with bright lines, when I was really like falling off the cliff with it, because I haven't kept bright lines for a couple months now, is that I would go on the accountability calls, or I'd go on Facebook, and when people were like very encouraging to each other, it would just make me angry.
Yeah.
It would just, it always had the opposite effect on me.
Yeah.
And I would say, oh, this is like a cult. And I don't want to be in a cult. And I don't want to like follow these rules and weigh things. And the truth is, when I was really following it, I wasn't weighing, I was kind of estimating and things, and that worked for me. And I think that was a way that I could kind of balance and compromise it. So it's that rebel really needs to, the rebel had a cause at one point, but now I don't think the rebel has a cause.
Yes.
And
That's
the
a
rebel
great
has,
realization.
you know, the rebel is working against me. Whereas when the rebel formed, probably deep in childhood, it was a way to assert my individuality,
Yeah.
you know, and to rebel against certain mores in the culture and my family background.
Yeah.
And I don't really need to do that anymore.
Yeah.
But it's still like this strong kind of persona that wants to flip the bird at all the rules. And Bright Lines has a lot of rules, right?
Yeah.
And she's laughing.
Yeah.
So that's a big issue for me, that I have to come to terms with the rebel inside me that is actually, I'd like to be a revolutionary that conquers this, that has the, like, revolution is about freedom. And if I could get to like this freedom of from being enslaved by food, and I also am trying to quit smoking, so I would like to turn the rebel against those things.
Yeah.
I've been struggling with that.
Yeah.
So any suggestions would be great.
Well, the rebel is, what's that?
I just went off on a rage there about the rebel.
Did good. You did good. That was good. That was a good rant, because you got it. You know, painted a fundamentally accurate picture of, you know, what's going on with you. Mm-hmm. And the rebel is your right hemisphere personality. And once you get into the workshop, you're going to find out you're halfway there on doing the structured daydream, because she already has a name. She's the rebel.
Mm-hmm.
And now your other side, left hemisphere, you need to come up with a name, if you haven't already, for her, to personify her. So that'll be interesting for you. Yeah, go ahead. Say what you're thinking.
Yeah, I think one of the issues that has come up is that like the right side, the artsy side of me, resents the left brain, resents the structure, and any name I come up with would probably be pretty nasty. So I need to figure out a way to bring that part of me into my heart and accept it as being something that's actually does have my best interest in heart, at heart.
Yes.
That's going to be an interesting thing to do.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, and when you do that, I want you to send me an email.
Okay.
mentor@cox.net. I want to hear about it. And I'm finding it kind of interesting. You know, I don't know if I've had quite so many people on the call who actually have not yet done a reconciliation. And I think that might be because this notion of it was easy to begin with, and then it got hard, resonated with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people. And so so my email caught your attention. And so now the next step is, if I can encourage you in some way, I have my fingers crossed that everybody that here has said, including you, Brooke, that said you're going to do it, that you actually get in there and do it.
Yeah, I think I will.
Because you're in for a fantastic experience at the end. Just absolutely terrific.
Well, I think my right side is going to say, "Hey, let's try something new," right?
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you. This has been great. It makes a lot of sense, and it feels like it will really promote a balance that I could live with. I mean, I don't want to feel like all the joy has been taken out of food.
Yeah.
Because it has felt that way.
Yeah. And your idea about freedom is a great one. You know, that everybody can get on the bandwagon with is a good one.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for this. I really appreciate it. It's been great.
You're welcome. And thank you for participating.
You bet.
Makes a big difference too. I'll put you back on mute.
Okay.
Okay. And let's see. let's see. Let's see. Janine, I've got you unmuted, and I see
Hi.
you've got your hand up. Hello, what were you
No,
thinking?
I wasn't sure if you could hear me. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I actually had a question for you. I did the reconciliation I just found out about this whole thing last weekend, and I listened to the whole seminar and did the reconciliation, which I totally agree was amazing. And I have told everybody who will listen this week about how amazing it was, but they just look at you like you're crazy because they're not part of this whole program. But it was really, really good. But I found it fascinating, like that both sides actually did have a common goal, which I thought was really neat. But I'm not understanding how you continue the dialogue after the reconciliation. So I got, when I was doing that daydream, like I got some good things about how what my right hemisphere wanted, because I stuff her down with left to do tasks and success and all stuff. So one of them is sitting outside in the sun. She loves that, so I've been doing that, which is awesome. But can you give me some hints on, like, when you're saying you have to continue the dialogue, like how do you do that? Like morning meditation, or like situational, or anything you can help with? That would be great.
Okay, so that's a really great question. So the reconciliation part, you don't have to repeat, because you probably made some apologies, had them make apologies to each other, and they got, on board with, being, becoming more like accepting and welcoming of each other. So some of the situations are like, if you break a bright line, and you, let's say next week you break a bright line, and you're a little concerned about it, so that you sit down, and it happened like, or let's say earlier in the day, and you carve out some time, maybe 15 or 20 minutes for you to be alone, and you maybe might decide to do the same, like metaphoric use of the physical use of your hands, like bring them out into your hands, and you're still like, your inner self is back there, and you say, okay, let's kind of figure out what happened this afternoon. What went on? Was there something going on maybe a few minutes prior to that that we're not fully aware of right now? We had this craving, and we just acted on it, and we decided right at the time, we just acted on it. We're not going to beat ourselves up about it, but we're going to talk about it later. And so now here we are. We're talking about it. It's afterwards. Like, what happened? And then you could ask your right hemisphere, was there something that you were upset about? And you'll actually get an answer. Or you can ask your left hemisphere, was there something going on that you see that maybe was kind of where we ignored something? So that's like a kind of a strategy session, or a debriefing session with each other. Then another one that I enjoy from time to time is making a date with myself. I have become my own best company. And so I can go and do things on my own, and I don't need to have somebody with me like I used to in years past. It used to be I hated my own company. I just always was trying to distract myself, had to have the radio on, or had to be doing something that would distract me, because I just was not comfortable just sitting there being with myself. And I even have a little bit of that to this day, that I will go in the car. Being in the car is one of my favorite times to commune with myself. And so I can ask, what's going on today? Or I'll make some decisions. I have another workshop that I do around something called the butterfly code, which is where I make decisions about life. I make committed decisions, and it's kind of a stepwise process. but I'll include everybody. I'll include all three of us in making a decision. We need to do something about that. I'll say, okay, so here's my decision. I am decided, determined, dedicated. I'm committed that I am going to not only enjoy this meeting that's coming up, but I'm going to do something during this meeting with these three folks that I normally don't enjoy. I'm going to do something that I know each of them are going to appreciate me saying. I'm going to say something that I know each of them is going to appreciate me saying. And so I'm working this out three-way, and I'll say, okay, Mike is my name from my left hemisphere currently. I say, Mike, are you on board with that? Yep, absolutely. And I'll go, Michael, my right, are you on board with that? And he might say, yeah, absolutely. But what I would like to see is actually make sure that in these meetings that everybody agrees to a break in the middle, because sometimes they go on too long. I'm all for it if we get a break in. So now that's typical, of a right hemisphere, wanting to do something, wanting to be able to have the freedom to do something, when the urge comes. So that's like a decision-making session. Or the one I said, going out on a date with myself. It might be just going out to Redbox, and the kids are gone, and they're off doing something, and I'm all by myself. I'm a single parent, so then I decide, okay, now's the time I'm going to watch this Redbox movie that I've been thinking about, and I might even light a candle for myself. I might make sure that for that evening, I'm doing one of my more favorite Brightline meals that I know I really enjoy. And so I'm just with myself and enjoying myself on this little date. And when I do a walk, I will often do communing during a walk at the same time and find out, okay, what's happening.
Oh, that's great.
And not only that, but when I'm on a walk, I'll do something where, okay, I'm going to take this moment. This is this moment of time where I'm not going to think about the future. I'm not going to think about the past. I'm just going to look around and see, what is it that I see that I really like, that I can look at that I like. And then, or I can go, what is it that is going on in my life right now that I can really appreciate right here in this moment? And I'll start to, think about that. And I might initiate, again, a question and answer. What do you think about that, Michael? And then what do you think about that, Mike? How's that? Does that get you going?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those are great ideas. Really good. So thank you. That helps me understand it better. I will say,
go ahead.
After I did the reconciliation, and it was funny because it took me a long time to have the two sides agree to work with each other, because I didn't like each other, which is similar to what the woman before me was saying. But I found the reconciliation profound. I really did. I felt like choking up now just thinking about it. It was amazing. I didn't even know how much conflict I had and how much I was suppressing the right hemisphere. It was actually a lot of fun, but I just got so busy in tasks and life and business and so obviously a lot of kindness and compassion to stuffing her for so long. But how this week, oh my gosh, I was so much more funny, because that's what the right hemisphere is. And I even forgot that that's a part of me. You know what I mean? Spontaneously just saying goofy, funny things that in the past I would have judged that people might not like it, or they might think it's stupid. They might think I'm stupid. You know what I mean? And I was always, of course, projecting it out to everybody else might think that, but really it was me judging my own self, as that. So I don't know, it was great. It was really great. So thank you so much for that.
Jadine, you are so welcome. And I didn't want to stop you there because I wanted you to you were on a free flow. But that is as good a description as you can hear from someone about what you can expect in terms of results from doing a personal reconciliation or reunion. And I'm so happy. I want to thank you for talking about, how it was profound, how it was amazing, and how things are naturally happening, kind of all by themselves. A few things are happening in terms of your self-expression. And that's one of the hallmarks of a personal reconciliation reunion, is that things start to happen in a positive way automatically. You don't have to necessarily think about them, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so that's something I wanted, all of us that are on this call, that have not done it yet. I mean, that's about the best encouragement that I can hear from you, Janine, for them to just go do it. Do the thing. Do the thing.
They won't regret it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's why I want to express my deep appreciation to you for your describing your experience.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right. Let's see. I'm going to lower your hand and mute. And let's see. Denise Hovey, I'm going to unmute you.
Oops.
Okay, I can't see you right now, but I know I can still hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I lost my my Zoom there, so I'm not on video, but I just want to say thank you so much, and I'm so excited for all the people. I love all the wonderful energy that's on this call today.
Yeah.
And I think it was created by you, Michael. You started it out, and I think everybody should be required, which is a strong word, but everybody in BLE should be required to listen to this this conversation that we've been having today, because it just sums up so succinctly the process, and everybody can benefit from this understanding. And so anybody who has not done the reconciliation, I wholeheartedly recommend you doing it as well. And then I don't know if you mentioned or not, but I know you're reworking your taping of the 2 a.m. syndrome, but remind people that they have to go down a little bit further and run off the 7 steps, because sometimes that people get lost there a little bit. They don't know what to do, and they don't realize that they have to download those 7 steps, so they'll have the process in front of them.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to make sure people knew that. And I also encourage people to continue on once you've done your reconciliation, that you continue on with your next steps, your next programs, because learning about the butterfly code and the remaking your past, those things are just a continuum on the reconciliation process. So, and I've been in your courses and I've tremendously benefited, and I just encourage people to check those out.
Yeah, thank you so much, Denise. Yeah. And thank you for the part about the download. The user guide, it's important to read over the user guide a couple times, I believe. And that user guide, you can get it when you're watching the video. Just below the video, there's a box, an information box, that in the lower left corner, it says show more. And if you click on where it says show more, the box drops down and expands, and you'll see that there's a link there to download the hard copy of the user guide. All you have to do is click on that link. Now, I think even when the box is not expanded, that link is still right there at the top, even when the box is smaller. So I don't think you have to click on the show more to get the link, but it might help on your computer. I don't know. It might help on your computer. So by all means, the link is there just below the actual video. Yeah. Thank you, Denise.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. This is beautiful call. Beautiful, beautiful call.
Yeah. I'm happy with it too. I love that I got out that summary of, what kind of a summary of what it's all about.
Yeah.
And let's see, who, Cindy. Okay, so I think I'm coming back to you, Cindy. It says Cindy N.O.R.S. Worthy. Let's see, I've got you unmuted. I think you were the first one I unmuted, and I don't think we actually heard from you. Cindy, if you have a microphone, tell me what you were thinking. Okay, once in a while, now I'm hearing a little bit of something going on in the background.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, go ahead. Step right.
I am brand new to all of this, Michael, and so
Okay.
I'm still trying to grasp it. And so I really don't. I didn't even start listening to the last half an hour or so. So I'm really not in a position to offer much. But I would ask, since I am so new, and I've never listened to the 2 a.m. broadcast that you have. To be honest, I was kind of intimidated by how long it was and the time commitment that it involves. So for someone that is just starting out, I've been so touched by some of the testimonies of people that have been sharing today. And so I do intend to go back and make some time for that tomorrow. And I'll do what you had suggested about looking for the introduction or something that I need to be able to be more aware of it. So any other suggestions for someone that is just getting ready to start this and is still a little bit clueless about what's going on?
Okay. So if you're, number one, clueless, and you're at the same time a little bit intimidated by the length, so there's a couple things. The first hour of the workshop is all about the science of the right and the left hemisphere. And it's all about making the compelling case that each hemisphere of the brain is an independent personality. So just from, what's your thought? I mean, Cindy, do you need any convincing that the right and the left hemisphere can conflict with each other?
No, I think I can understand that part. That I can be in agreement with that.
Okay. All right. So then,
I've listened to a little bit of the parts work. I haven't done a whole lot with that either.
Okay.
But I can identify with what you had said, earlier about how when I started BLE, it was so easy for me, and then and now I'm on maintenance for the last 5 months. And I'm starting to find, some difficulty arising. I've noticed that my peace is not what it used to be, and so that's what I'm looking to regain. And and I did listen to a little bit of, like I said, the other work that the other gentleman did, the parts work. I listened to 1 or 2 of his sessions and found that to be helpful. So in a comparison to what he is offering, is when you talk about the 2 hemispheres, that's again relatively new, the right and the left. I kind of understand that, but in reference to his parts work, when he's talking about getting in touch with your different parts, how does that compare? How would you compare the work?
That's a hard question to answer. I would say, both of those are what we call metaphors. Like the idea that we have parts, that's a metaphoric way of describing, or like an analogy for describing what goes on in our head and our thinking. Right and left hemisphere, in a sense, that's also a metaphor or an analogy. The thing that has always attracted me to the right and left hemisphere model is that it can be proven by science. Science tells us and shows us, there's some videos in the beginning of that workshop where you see someone who has had their right and left hemisphere disconnected from each other surgically. And you see in this video how the right and the left hand fights with each other. And so science actually demonstrates then that the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere each have an independent personality. So on that basis alone, that tells us, and it's been shown, that they can conflict with each other. They can get into disagreements with each other, and they can create inner turmoil, and they can create inner conflict inside your consciousness. So to me, the idea that there are two hemispheres is simple. That's it. And science proves it, and it's simple. And so the structured daydream that I teach in the 2 a.m. workshop is equally simple. You have to follow the instructions. There's 7 steps to it, but it's equally simple in the sense that you're talking to yourself, so to speak. You're doing a structured daydream. You're doing like make-believe like you did when you were a kid, only it actually turns out to have a realism to it that's profound. So I think both of those methodologies, doing the parts work for certain people is going to work pretty well. Doing the inner conflict work that I talk about between the 2 hemispheres is going to work really well, probably for people who have episodes of inner conflict and for people who are high on the susceptibility scale. Okay, does that make any sense?
Yes, thank you so much. I can very much relate to what you're saying, and I often do, have the conflict that you described. And I do remember hearing that story about the man that had his brain, the 2 different parts and stuff, that one brain, the study you talked about. But yes, well, I do appreciate that, and I will look forward to finding the time to do this. And so, if I were to, I work full time, and so if I'm going to set aside the time to do this, is the 2 hours watching that first video going to be enough time to do this the first time, or do I need to set aside more time than that?
Let's say, let's say the video is in 2 halves, and I'll see if I can answer your question as best I can here. I'm struggling a little bit with it. The first half is the science. That's about 1 hour and 10 minutes. The second half walks through the exercise, the structured daydream, and then you need to have the user guide printed out and studied a couple times. So you could get by, if you didn't want to watch the science, you could watch the last portion of it at the 1 hour or 1 hour and 15-minute mark, and then you study the user guide twice, and then you're going to need to set aside some time by yourself, about a half hour to an hour, to actually do the structured daydream all by yourself, following the instructions in the user guide.
Okay.
So, I mean, and you can watch the first hour. I mean, you can do it in, inside. You can watch the first hour to get the science, and then, stop it and then come back to it later for the second hour and get the part about how to do the structured daydream, and then do the studying of the user guide on your own. It's pretty much. You kind of got a lot of choices there, and
Okay.
it kind of depends. If the science doesn't appeal to you or call to you, you get into it. You say no, okay, then you just go right on to where at the 1 hour and 15-minute mark.
Okay.
Yeah, that was kind of a long answer, but
No, that was very helpful. I will go ahead and download the user guide today and work on listening to that first part of it today. Then I'll know I'll have about I'll have some time tomorrow to maybe get into the more in-depth part. And it is something you need to do alone?
yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, Cindy, you're welcome, and I'm glad you're here. And you're new to all this, and that's fantastic.
Thank you, Michael. I'm excited too.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's see. Let's see if there's a couple of people here yet who are here by telephone. Let's see. You have the last 4 digits of your phone number are 7146. I've just unmuted you.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Gaynell?
What's your name?
Yes, I'm Gaynell.
Janelle?
Gay Nell.
What's the first letter?
G as in George. Gay Nell.
Gaynell. All right, Gaynell.
Yes.
Tell me, what were you thinking?
Well, it was kind of a new learning to look at those different parts and that perspective on the different perspectives for each side, the right and the left hemisphere. And I think that makes a lot of sense. In terms of what happens to me in my bright life, when you were listening to the steps, I found it very difficult to just thinking about what kind of things I like to do. I think that's a problem in itself. What I enjoy doing, I couldn't come up with a whole lot of things. I think, I like to eat, so that's not really helpful, right?
Well, that's the one. We want to have a wide variety of choices, as wide a variety as we can come up with. So you need probably at least 2 other alternatives.
Yes, and that was what I was. And I guess I need to, after the call, I need to sit down and think about what I really like to do. Because right now I'm not doing. I work. I like working, but I'm not saying that should be on my list of things that I enjoy. I do enjoy it, but I don't think that takes me in the right direction. So that's what I'm struggling with. I have had lots of breaks, and I got down close to my goal weight, and then it's been derailed ever since then. So I'm trying to struggle to get back to having clean, bright lines, which I have not been successful so far at doing.
Yeah. I really wish. I am wishing you the best on that. That maybe something here today will help. And if you sit down and do come up with, carve out that time, make that time for yourself to sit down and make a little list, that will be time very, very well spent. Or something new that maybe you've never done.
Oh, that's an idea. Yeah.
And you could one of the things you could do is just go on Google and Google hobbies, and they'll come up with a couple hundred hobbies, and just kind of go down the list and stop at the one that catches your eye and see what would that be about. So, and that would be an exercise in self-love, very sincere self-love for your right hemisphere personality. I mean, she's a big part of you. She wants you to enjoy life. And she, up to this point, food has been the primary thing. And she's gone along with you, cooperatively gone along with you on, the beginning of your Bright Line journey, and cooperated and got you down some. And she really deserves appreciation. And she'll stay with you on the plan if you figure out ways to appreciate her and figure out ways to allow her to be happy and joyful and experience, some of the different kinds of sensuality of life. That would be really time well spent.
Well, one of the things that I think helped me to understand is that I had pretty easy time, like in my boot camps. I went to 2 boot camps, and I had pretty easy time doing the boot camps. And after the boot camps, when I got to my close to my goal weight, I started to really, kind of derail. And I started to try to look at what kinds of things I did that was helpful during the times that I was doing okay on the Bright Line eating. And even that didn't really help, going back to the modules. in some way or another, my right hemisphere kind of took over. You know, we gonna, and in my left hemisphere, and it was not being heard at all. So, but I'm gonna do that personal reconciliation and finish listening to. I started listening to the 2 a.m. syndrome, but I haven't finished it yet. So I'm going to
Okay.
do that as well.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you've heard a couple of the people who've done it say what you can expect from it. Profound, amazing. Yep. If you're doing that for the first time, you're going to love it. You're going to love it, Gaynell.
Okay. Thank you so very much, Mike.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm going to put you back on mute. And 8577. I've got you unmuted. That's your last 4 digits of your phone number. 8577. Tell me what you're
Yes.
thinking.
Hello, Mike. This is Sherry. I've first of all, I've done the reconciliation maybe a year ago, about a year ago. And when you were speaking, you definitely were talking to me. So I agree with everything. My concern is that, and I think I might be a candidate for the inner conflict resolution, although I don't know. I honestly don't think there was any traumatic, although maybe I don't realize it was traumatic, but I can't think of anything that was traumatic in my life that would make me react this way. And what I'm going to say is that I am also close to my goal. But what I have noticed, and not only on bright line eating, but in the past, I'm a high 10. So when I cut carbs, it's great for me because it's also a chemical thing, as you know, I think most people know. And I get a false sense of confidence when I do that, because after you do it 2 or 3 days, you definitely will not crave sugar. So, and I'll do a real hard cut so that I can get back on track. And that gets me back on track. But one thing I have really noticed is that I tend to fall off when I get too many compliments, which is why I think that it might be a inner conflict thing, maybe a fear of reaching the goal, or I don't know. I'm not qualified to figure it out at this level, but it's got to be something, because even though I have good conversations with my, I'll say the 2 hemispheres. I think we're working together, but obviously, if we get to that point, something is going wrong. So, and I can't quite figure it out yet, or why, because it really doesn't come a strong urge type thing. It's more of a cockiness, like, oh, don't worry about it. You can have a little bit of this, and then you can. And so I know that's the right brain doing that, but it's also a certain cockiness that comes in with, like, oh, well, you know, I've got my eating under control. I've got my carbs under control, and I'll take a little bite. And like years ago, Dr. Atkins in his book said, 1 bite is a kiss of death. It is so true.
Yeah. Now, have you done the personal reconciliation and reunion?
Yes, I did it about a year ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, you know, one thing that I might suggest here at the end is, you know, I do an evaluation, a no-cost evaluation. I offer that to boot campers, and anybody who has done has also, you know, watched the workshop, the 2 a.m. syndrome workshop. So if you want to spend a little bit of time with me one-on-one and kind of do an evaluation of your situation, and since you've already done reconciliation reunion, you're kind of you've got that part pretty well handled. I may be able to help you put the next find the secret piece of the puzzle that you're missing. But
Thank you.
so
Yeah.
just email me at mentor@cox.net. And this invitation is open to all the folks who are in the Bright Line Eating program who have signed up for the Beating the 2 a.m. Syndrome workshop. Email me at mentor@cox.net saying, I'd like that no-cost evaluation. And
Cox is COX.
.net, yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then if you're on the ball there, send me the days and times that might work the best for you, and what time zone that you're in. That's important, what time zone you're in. And then I'll send back to you a couple of choices that are within your time preferences, and we'll get it scheduled. And we'll see if you get you on track.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That'll help. And and I'm actually on track now, but I'm living in fear of almost honestly kind of staying away from people so nobody says anything.
Okay. All right. That's
I know
good.
that sounds crazy, but okay.
You could wait until you got a problem.
No, I'm gonna do it ahead. I want to be ahead of the game.
All right.
Because I know when the I do great until the compliments start coming in.
Okay.
When people really and it sort of did start because I weightlift and I was in the gym and one of the guys said something and I was like, oh God. As soon as it starts, that's when I get cocky. I know it is.
Okay. We can look at that in the complimentary session.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good plan. And so I want to reiterate once again that that's open for everyone. And so thank you. And how do you say your first name again?
Shari.
Yeah. Okay. I got it. So thank you so much for bringing it up, Sherry. And you're our last person. And we've gotten a chance during the call to hear from everybody who was on the call, except maybe if you fell off the call early. Everybody, we got a chance to hear from everybody, which is fantastic. And so, I'd like to end the call by saying, in conclusion, all of us can probably do better at showing respect, love, and affection for our right hemisphere. And she and he is the one that gets the short shrift often when time is perceived as being tight. And so the whole theme of this call has been, let's respect her. Let's respect him. Let's do the things that she and he love. Let's carve out time for them. And she will be our best partner if we show that respect and we make sure that we take care of her needs and her loves and her enjoyment, and it'll be our mutual enjoyment. And I want you to remember that relationship is the key, the relationship between the left and the right hemisphere. If that's good, then most everything else in your life is going to be going good. And the most important relationship in life is the one with yourself. So I'll see you all again in 2 weeks. I'm going to unmute everyone here. So we can all say, everybody is unmuted. We can all say goodbye. So we'll see you in 2 weeks. Everybody say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care. Love you all.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Namaste.